Welcome to the first fall webinar of the HeatSmart Tompkins program, and we're partnering today with our friends and neighbors to the north and west, HeatSmart Central New York. HeatSmart is a local nonprofit, and we are dedicated to cost savings, comfortable, healthy homes, and climate solutions for your home. We don't make any profit off of any sales that you may contract with installers as part of the program. We're just here for information and outreach and support purposes. So let's see. Okay. So HeatSmart Tompkins is part of the NYSERDA Clean Heating and Cooling Communities, which you can see on this map. This map does need to be updated though, because we now are serving Chemung and Tompkins counties, so that we need to color Chemung County in yellow. And welcome to some Chemung neighbors that are on the call today. And there are some new clean heating and cooling communities being added to this map. So if you join us for a webinar about a month from now, you might see a new map with more counties filled in being served by clean heating and cooling communities. What's really exciting for the Tompkins County HeatSmart program is that we were the first HeatSmart program. We started it as a grassroots effort. It came out of something called Solar Tompkins, where we were promoting solar panel installations. And that program was so successful that the group decided to turn themselves to clean heating and cooling, and founded the first HeatSmart program. And NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, decided it was such a great idea that they decided to fund similar programs all across New York State, which you can see here. So we're small but mighty, and we're joined by HeatSmart Central New York, which serves the 5 counties in light blue here: Onondaga, Cortland, Seneca, and 2 others that I can't remember, but I'll tell you later. These ones. Okay. Next slide. So why is it important to have clean heating and cooling communities anyway? Well, the reason is that you might have heard about this climate crisis that we're in right now, and the importance of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And this is how we emit greenhouse gases in New York. This pie chart on the left, it's about 40% transportation and about 40% on-site combustion. And then 20-something% is electricity. And on-site combustion, a big chunk of that, a huge chunk of that, is heating and cooling buildings. And the reason for that is that 90% of our homes are heated by burning fossil fuels in New York State, which is a lot of homes. If you multiply by how many people live in New York. So if we're going to do our part to stave off the climate crisis a bit longer and to meet New York State's now under law climate goals, we need to tackle this on-site combustion in buildings. It's very, very important. And it's one of the most important pieces, and it's one of the most difficult, because each house is its own little fossil burning system as it stands now. So each one of those has to be changed over to a different system. And that's where HeatSmart comes in. So what HeatSmart does is because each individual building owner has to make decisions for their own building, there's a lot of barriers to that. There's time, there's money, there's not knowing what to do. So we try to fill that gap. We remove barriers to people taking action by connecting people with information, connecting people with the incentives that help make these things affordable, and connecting you with our trusted installer partners, people that we know will give you good information and do good work for you if you should decide to go forward to a contract with them. So how do we do this information sharing with the public? Well, we used to try to come to the public and meet people where they were in their homes and their libraries and their town halls, And now, of course, with COVID, that's quite challenging. So we are switched to this webinar format. We really encourage people to make use of our website. It has a lot of information on it, and there's just a lot to explore there. We have a learning room where you can walk yourself through some of this information. Webinars such as this, after we do them, are posted on the website. Home tours, fact sheets, case studies. We have all kinds of information on there for you. And so we also have this webinar series, of which this is the first. We're going to have virtual home tours where you can meet a homeowner who has had insulation and air sealing and heat pumps installed into their house, and you can ask them questions and meet the contractor that did the work and ask them questions. We also will have a series of clean energy topics, such as this one. So, and then if you're concerned, as many people rightly are, about exposure, if you want to have a home assessment done, our installers have all developed methods for giving you a home assessment remotely. They don't even have to come to your house. Of course, they do like to come to your house and meet you in person. So if you are comfortable with that, they will come and they will be masked and respectfully social distanced from you and take good care of you. So whichever is more comfortable for you, they can talk to you on the phone. You can send them photos. There's various ways that are acceptable to get an assessment for your house for work that you might want to have done to make it more comfortable and lower your carbon footprint. So today's topic is home performance, and we have a guest speaker. I'm very delighted to introduce Dick Kornbluth, who is a nationally recognized expert in building performance. He's the board chair of the Building Performance, this is hiding my text so I can't read it, Institute. And he's on the board of the Building Performance Association. He has 43 years of experience as a residential retrofit installation contractor. And he is in a consulting relationship with our HeatSmart neighbors, HeatSmart CNY. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn this over to Dick for the presentation on home performance. So let me stop and go ahead, Dick, when you're ready. Share your screen.
I gotta find it now. Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to talk about what is home performance contracting. I'm going to talk a little bit of building science. I'm going to talk about where heat is lost and how to fix it. And I want to just get started quickly with some questions. So how's your house working for you? Are there rooms too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter? Do you have ice dams or icicles in the wintertime hanging off your roof? Do you have any moisture-related damage? Do you have mold issues in your house? Do you have excessive dust? Do you have unreasonably high utility bills? These are the kinds of issues that home performance contractors address. And you'll notice it's not just about the bills. It's really about the health, safety, durability, comfort, and maintenance of your house. Home performance contractors are problem solvers by definition. Okay, so I'm going to start out with a little bit of building science, because everything that home performance contractors do is based on an understanding of how houses work. So the basic principle of building science is that a house is a system, and a system is always a group of interrelated parts that interact with each other. So we're going to look quickly at the parts of the house system. First of all, there's the envelope. That's the part of the house that separates the heated and conditioned part of the house from the outside world. There are the mechanical systems in the house, which is everything in the house that either consumes energy or produces energy. So it's furnaces and water heaters and fans and computers and appliances, et cetera, including your lights. And the third component of the house system are the people and the occupants. Believe it or not, by their behavior and the way they act, they actually influence how the house works. And all three of these structural components interact with three environmental variables, which are the movement of heat and moisture and air to produce the house system. And the most important thing to take away from this diagram is that In other words, all of these parts of the system and the movement of these environmental variables are all interconnected, so that if you alter one thing or one part of the house, it can have consequences for the other parts of the house and the circumstances around that are not always obvious. And I'm going to give you a case study to illustrate the point. So I'm going to talk about how mechanical systems can have an impact on the envelope of the system through the movement of moisture, and how those interactions can be sometimes not obvious to people. So this is first an understanding of what furnaces do. They burn fossil fuels and they make heat. And when they burn fossil fuels, they produce, besides the heat, they produce two things. They produce carbon dioxide and they produce water. In fact, they produce a lot of water. If you have a 100,000 BTU furnace or boiler in your house, for every hour that that furnace or boiler is running, you are producing a gallon of water. So the rule is 100,000 BTUs of natural gas will, when it's burned, will produce a gallon of water. Where does that water go? Well, in a properly designed house, and furnace and heating system is vented up the chimney and is then safely removed from the building. What happens if that doesn't take place? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about. This is an actual customer of ours. She called us for an attic insulation estimate. She had a tiny little ranch house on a slab. During the assessment, we noticed there was mold growing along the edge of the ceiling on the rear addition. And we said, where did that come from? And she said she had no idea, but the only thing that she could relate was that the mold began after she had her furnace replaced. So let's look at her house. This is her house. It's a small ranch house. It's basically one room, two rooms, which is a bedroom and then a common living room and kitchen area. And on the back of the house, where there was a small addition which she was using as a dining room. In the middle of the house was the utility room. There was a washer, dryer, there was a forced air furnace, and there was a water heater. So what did we notice? We noticed mold growing right along the edge of the roof and the ceiling in the addition. Question is, where did that mold come from and what caused it to appear? Well, first of all, in order for mold to appear, you need several things. You need a fuel, a cellulosic fuel, for example, the paper on sheetrock. So mold likes to grow on sheetrock, but it's actually growing on the paper of the sheetrock. You need sufficiently high temperature, and in a conditioned house, in a conditioned space, the temperature is sufficiently high. But the thing that's most important for mold growth is moisture. Mold does not grow on dry surfaces. Mold only grows on wet surfaces. So the question is, how did that spot in the house get wet? And here's where the part gets interesting. In a typical forced air furnace, which is working properly, you turn the fan on, and let's say you put 2 units of warm air into the living space. At the exact same time, you will be returning 2 units of cooler air to be reheated and then redistributed to the house. If you look at it mathematically, you're supplying 2 units and you're returning 2 units, and the net effect is 0. But let's look at a slightly different circumstance. Let's look at a house where there just happens to be a leak on the return side. And in this case, I put it in a basement because that makes the diagram easier to work. But let's turn on the fan. You're supplying 2 units of warm air to the house, but you might only be bringing 1 unit of warm air back from the living space because the second unit that's coming back to neutralize the supply is coming from the basement through that return leak. What does that mean? Well, on the supply side, which is up here, you're actually putting more air into that living space than you're taking out. And that's going to cause pressure. And that pressure is going to increase air leakage and exfiltration from the building. But what's more critical is that on the return side in the basement, you're creating a vacuum. You're sucking the air out of the basement into the furnace. And what vacuums create is negative pressure. And nature doesn't like a vacuum. It's going to want to find a hole to the outside of the building to bring air in to neutralize that vacuum. And the easiest hole it can find in a classic traditional atmospheric furnace situation is the chimney. so it's going to cause backdrafting. So the return leak on the furnace causes a vacuum in the basement, which causes either the water heater or the furnace itself to backdraft. You'll notice there's two arrows. The red arrow is carbon dioxide, but the blue arrow is water vapor. So in a case where you have a return leak on a furnace that's causing backdrafting, you are bringing water vapor back down the flue into the building. So now let's look at her house. Here's the utility room. In the wintertime, what would happen is when her furnace would run, this problem occurred because when they replaced her furnace, she had a very, very small house, so she did not have a ducted return. She simply had a grill in the wall between the utility room and the corridor, in the corridor in the house. So when the furnace was reinstalled, they did not attach the return plenum of the furnace to the grill. The result was that instead of the return air coming from the hallway, the return air came from inside the utility room, which created negative pressure in the utility room, especially when the door was closed, which caused water vapor to be drawn back into the building. And where did that water vapor go? Well, when they insulated the addition, they didn't get the insulation all the way out to the end of the ceiling, which created a cold spot. Water condensed on the cold spot of the ceiling, and lo and behold, that's where the mold formed. The point of all this is that there was an interaction that was a relationship between a faultily installed furnace and the building envelope or shell of her house that created a mold problem. As a little side story, she told us that before she called us, she called a roofer, and said he would fix the problem by putting a new roof on. And she called Sears, and they told her she needed new siding. Thank God she did not bite on any of those bullets, those cherries. So that's how building science works in a building. The home performance contractor would figure this problem out and make that connection and solve that problem. Right, let's talk about the attic. So your house is like a hot air balloon that's actually anchored to the ground. Hot air balloons rise because of warm air inside the balloon. Your house is like a hot air balloon. In the wintertime, warm air naturally rises through the building, and it actually creates a measurable positive pressure at the top of the building. And one of the things that's important about this is look at the size of the arrows. The largest positive pressure that's generated by stack effect, which is what we call this warm air rising through the building, is at the top of the building, at the highest point in the building, which happens to be at the ceiling of the conditioned space. At the exact same time that it's creating positive pressure at the top of the building, this natural movement of warm air, which takes place, by the way, in any heated building in the wintertime, in cold weather, any place on the planet, this is taking place. At the same time that it's creating positive pressure at the top of the building, it's creating negative pressure at the bottom of the building. And that causes more infiltration to occur at the bottom of the building, which in this case could be a basement. And once again, the largest arrows are at the lowest point. So let's talk about the attic. Where are the holes? If we're going to talk about heat being lost because of stack effect, it's because warm air must be escaping into the attic. Well, where is it happening? Well, there's holes all over buildings that are, some of which are more obvious than others. There's gaps around chimneys. There's attic hatches that aren't weather stripped. There's recessed light fixtures that leak. There's bathroom fans that leak. This is just a few of the kinds of holes that exist. There are also plumbing chases. Every building that I know has a soil stack, which is a pipe that starts literally in the basement and runs all the way through the house and exits through the roof. And the space around that pipe is essentially a giant highway for warm air to escape into the attic. But if you have electrical wiring in your house, the chances are that there might be a hole in the top of a partition wall carrying wires to a switch or to an outlet. Those holes are actually gaps where air leaks. So there's many, many places like this where air can leak into the attic. Why is this important? Because this is the kind of thing that happens in houses that are not air sealed, even when those houses have insulation in the attic, totally due to the warm air leaking into the attic. And how does that happen? Well, when heat leaks into an attic, and there's snow on the attic, people don't realize that snow is a really, really good insulator. So the bottom layer of snow is actually not seeing the coldest temperature outside. But when that roof warms up because of heat loss, that snow will melt. And when the snow melts, the water runs to the edge of the roof. And when it reaches the edge of the roof, it refreezes and forms icicles, unless we have a really long cold spell, in which case that the icicles don't form, but what we get is ice dams. Ice dams are dangerous because as water freezes, it expands. And if there's water in contact with the roof freezing, it can literally force its way underneath the shingles, then melt and literally cause interior damage to the house. So why is insulation not sufficient to prevent heat loss from air movement? Well, think about a wool sweater. Someone wears a wool sweater on a very calm day, they'll be perfectly comfortable. But the minute that the wind picks up, that wool sweater doesn't do much good because it's porous. It's designed not to stop air from movement. So if you have a wool sweater, air is going to go through it. It's going to cool your body off and render you less comfortable. So what do? What you do is you put on a windbreaker. So a windbreaker actually stops the wind from blowing. And in fact, a windbreaker makes a wool sweater work better because it stops the cold air from degrading the insulation performance of the wool sweater. Well, certain insulation is like a wool sweater. Fiberglass insulation, loose blown fiberglass, loose blown cellulose, they are the most common materials that are used in attic insulation, and they are just like the wool sweater. They're porous and air goes through them. So what do? Well, what we do is we air seal them. If you're walking outside, you put a windbreaker on. If you're insulating an attic, you air seal and you stop the movement of that warm air that literally will degrade the performance of the insulation. So let's talk about the basement. So we're back to our diagram of stack effect. And as I noted, the problem with basements is that there is the largest negative pressure at the bottom of the basement. What does that mean? It means that if you have any leaks to the outside of the building at the bottom of the basement, it's going to suck in cold air. The most common one and the most important one is actually the rim joist, which is where the wood framing sits on top of the foundation. Believe it or not, that's never really an airtight joint, and air can literally leak through that joint. It's also, if you have any penetrations through the foundation, like dryer vents or faucets, for example, in this case, those areas also can be leaky. And you'll note then the largest heat loss due to air leakage is out the top, but the largest cold air coming in, which degrades adds heating load to the building, is going to be at the bottom of the building in the basement. So the first thing to do is address the attic, and the second thing is to address the basement, and then the letter C is for conditioned space. I am a really big proponent of wall insulation. Many people think that you can't do wall insulation because it'll damage the house or damage the siding. But for clapboards and shingles and aluminum siding and vinyl siding, skilled technicians can take the siding off. You'll notice it's not all removed. He takes all there's studs every 16 inches. He's taking off enough siding to access each of those stud spaces, and he can do this throughout the whole house, and he can insulate the house and put the siding back on, and there'll be virtually no evidence that that contractor was there when they're done. So with almost all siding types, it's totally possible to insulate the walls. Well, why bother insulating the walls? First of all, it can be done with minimal damage to the siding. Wood shingles, clapboards, aluminum and vinyl siding can be removed and reinstalled. There's a huge reduction in heat loss by insulating the walls of a building. If you have 3 inches of insulation in your attic and you have no insulation in your walls, you are going to save more energy insulating your walls than you will if you add more insulation to the attic, because insulation is diminishing returns. And starting from an R of 4, which is an empty wall, versus an R of 11, which is an attic, it's actually a huge difference in starting points. So there's actually more savings by insulating the walls. There's also a huge significant improvement in comfort. And finally, people don't realize it, but insulating walls is an incredible noise reducer. And one of the things that we never talk about when I was in the business was how quiet the houses got after the walls were insulated, but it is an additional benefit. And that's it for me. I'm done. 16 minutes, Lisa. So there you go. Last slide. I hope I didn't go too fast. I tried to cover a lot of ground, and if there's any questions, please feel free to ask them.
So thank you so much, Dick. That was really great. I wanted to talk a little bit before turning it over to the Q&A about some special incentives that are available on a temporary basis that will help pay for this kind of work for a lot of people. So thanks to some special relief funds from New York State until December 31st, there are additional incentives. So the Empower program will give you a grant up to $10,000 to have building envelope work, insulation and air sealing work done if your household is earning below 60% of median income. So that if you qualify for HEAP, you will qualify for this $10,000 in work. And there's nothing you have to pay. It's completely free. But a lot of people earn a little bit too much to qualify for Empower. And for those folks, there's something called assisted home performance. Normally, assisted home performance is for folks earning up to 80% of median income. But as the COVID relief, it's been expanded to up to 120% of median income. And for those folks, you can get a matching grant of up to $5,000. So you can get, if you get $10,000 of work done, the state will pay half of that through assisted home performance. To give you an idea of what 120% of median income is, that for a household size of 4, you would have to be earning under $115,000 a year. So the bigger the household size, the higher that threshold. And additionally, there are additional grants that might be available to you through the Finger Lakes Climate Fund, who are our HeatSmart partners, and that's on a case-by-case basis. So if you qualify for any of the above, the assisted home performance, but it's still not enough for you to move forward, then you may be able to get an additional grant from the Finger Lakes Climate Fund. On our website, you can see what the income thresholds are for both of those programs for your household size. So I also want to introduce, in addition to HeatSmart CNY, Dick Kornbluth and Lindsay Speer, who's their program director, our HeatSmart Building Envelope partners, Halco Energy and Snug Planet. They are also going to introduce themselves, and they're here to also answer your questions in addition to me and Lindsay and Dick. They've gone through special training to be assisted home performance contractors who can help you get those grants and walk you through all the paperwork. So, and they're building envelope specialists in addition to being heat pump installers. So how to get started? Well, if you are interested in getting a proposal to have this kind of work done at your house, you need to first enroll with HeatSmart. If you are in Tompkins or Chemung County, then please enroll on heatsmarttompkins.org. But if you're in Cayuga, Cortland, Madison, Onondaga, or Oswego County, enroll with HeatSmart CNY. And you can select from our installer partners who you want to have come to your house or call you on the phone or email you to give you a proposal for what kind of work you might need to get done in your house. And there's no obligation or cost to you. These assessments are absolutely free, and you are not obligated to enter into a contract with anybody if you have this work done. So thanks for listening. If you haven't already introduced yourself in the chat, please say who you are and where you live and maybe how you heard about this webinar. And I can send this, but this is the contact information for the various HeatSmart programs that Dick showed you before. So if you just want to take a screenshot of this, also you can contact me or Lindsay directly through our websites. We have phone number and emails there. Okay, so I think that's it for me. Yep. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And at this point, we did well on time, Dick. Go us. So I'm going to open it up to people's questions. You can either unmute and ask a question or ask a question in the chat.
While people are thinking of their questions, I'll just introduce myself briefly. So I'm Lindsay Speer, and the campaign manager, campaign director for HeatSmart CNY. Sorry, I just had some really spicy Indian food while the presentation was going, so I'm realizing I can't speak quite right now. Anyway, so yeah, we're running in the 5 counties in central New York, and we're really pleased to be partnering with HeatSmart Tompkins on this. We have a hotline for people to call. You can reach myself. Also, you can reach Dick if you have questions following up after the webinar. And I'll put the chat in the number in the chat.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. Elizabeth, do you want to introduce yourself too and Snug Planet?
Sure. Can everybody hear me? Hi, everybody. Snug Planet has been based in Tompkins County for 14 years now. And the founder of Snug Planet, John Herod, was finishing up a postdoc as a forest scientist where he studied forests as a system. I just always like to say that to Dick. And he decided, he looked at climate change, this is about 22 years ago, and he said, I think reducing building energy use will be the best way I can use my life to mitigate climate change. So he left academia and decided to form an insulation contracting company. Crazy, I know, but he did that. And we chose Ithaca as a place to base our business. And we've been working with, Tompkins County and surrounding county homeowners all these years with a desire to reduce building energy use first. That's why I'm really glad we started this fall series with that, because sometimes it's the sexy things like solar panels and fancy heat pumps and geothermal that is like fun to talk about and you can show it to people. And it's really hard to convince people to get excited about reducing something. That's just not, as Americans, what we do. But that is what Snug Planet gets really excited about, is reducing air leakage for all the reasons that Dick said, not just saving money, but yes, saving money, but also being more comfortable and being healthier in your home and all the things that Dick already said. So I won't repeat those. I'll just say that that's our mission from the get-go, is to reduce building energy use in homes in ways that make sense for people and the planet. And then a few years ago, John went, I think that we want to also get homes off fossil fuel, and the way to do that is through heat pump technology. So we started installing and servicing and maintaining heat pumps in people's houses, and they love them. And this summer, while they were stuck at home, they really found they love the air conditioning. So they both heat and cool your house. I know that's not what we're talking about today, but I just wanted to say that we're excited about that. So I'll let other people talk. That's about Snug Planet. And if you have any questions, you can let me know after the others introduce themselves. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And we have a lot of webinars where we'll talk a lot about heat pumps coming up. So take a look for those. Also home tours of people who insulated their homes and then had heat pumps put in. So look for those. Matt, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and Halco Energy?
Sure. Thanks everybody for being here. My name is Matt Dennis with Halco Energy. Tell you a little bit about Halco. We've been in business since 1984, celebrating our 36th year of business now. We are a whole home performance contractor, which means we do everything. As a matter of fact, our motto is, yes, we do that. Speaking specifically on this particular webinar, that all starts with insulation, air sealing, tightening up the building envelope, and I know Dick gets excited anytime somebody agrees with him, so I wanted to make sure to point that out. But we're always it's also the low-hanging fruit. It's where you start. It's where it makes sense, because it makes sense to make your home more efficient. No matter how you heat your house, the less heat you need to put into it, the more comfortable you are, and the more efficient it is, and the more cost effective it is. But we've been doing insulation work for many years now, and we've actually pioneered some of the techniques that NYSERDA now requires, such as spray foaming underbellies in mobile homes. And we've gone we've gone and pioneered and shown that, hey, this is a good way to do it. This is how it makes sense. This is how everything works. And in addition to that, being being around as long as we have and offering as much as we do, from traditional HVAC, heat pumps, air source, ground source, our service department's available 24/7, 365. 140 people that work for the company. So we stay very busy. We've been, blessed to be able to take advantage of all these incentives and grants and programs that NYSERDA has. Been part of the HeatSmart program now since the inception. So we're original. We go way back. And because it fits the motto of what we do. Comfort today, energy for tomorrow. I mean, it makes sense to not waste money and be uncomfortable in your house. I mean, who wants to be uncomfortable in their own house? Doesn't make any sense at all. And in addition, with the current the state of the world today with the COVID issues, we're going out of our way to make sure that we're being hands off as needed. We've had a fair amount of success with virtual assessments and conversations with folks, and I've had multiple conversations with folks just carrying around their cell phone around their house saying, hey, show me this. Hey, show me that. Do you have a tape measure handy? If you can use a cell phone and a tape measure, I can do a lot of stuff for you, just not even leaving my house. And we're really trying to make sure that we're being conscious of that. We're taking all the the efforts needed to minimize contact and cleaning everything and sterilizing everything. So we take these things seriously, and we know you do too. So hopefully we can all get through this and make the world better on the other end. So that's what I got.
Thanks, Matt. Actually, that segues perfectly to Dale's question in the chat, which is it's actually a heat pump question, but he is asking, or Dale, do you want to unmute and ask it yourself? He says, when getting a heat pump, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just asking if, I know a lot of the people already in it, probably know the answer, but a lot of people, with COVID and everything, they're concerned about, making sure their home stays safe. So good ventilation is part of that. So just wondering if you guys are including that in your program. So, and I see in the chat, it looks like it is included. So
a lot of people, there's a myth out there that houses can be too tight, and really tight is the goal. And that's what we're talking about today. But houses could be under ventilated. And so you don't want to just leave your ventilation to chance. As Dick pointed out, lots of great examples. You want, if it's required in your home because you made your house nice and tight, then you want to mechanically choose where that ventilation comes in and out of your house, and that you have the appropriate amount of it. It involves a lot of math that luckily all of you, I will not do. I'll send people who know how to do it. But that's the kind of layperson answer. Matt might have something dorkier to say about that.
No, you got it. No, yeah, Dale, so to your question, yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we need to consider. So there's a variety of different ways to, address ventilation, but what we're really talking, I think what you might be touching on is indoor air quality in healthy homes. That goes hand in hand with efficiency. So yeah, I mean, as Elizabeth said, you can make if your house is tight, then you need to address the other problem, which is the other extreme, is not having enough airflow, and that's when you have to look at mechanical ventilation, and also treating air quality. So it's a lot of different solutions available for that.
And just to add a little bit to that, in a lot of forced air systems too, you're going to see extremely high MERV filters, anything from MERV 13 to 16 added to these systems. And those are kind of HEPA equivalent filters that are really going to filter a lot of the particulate matter out of your air, but are also capable of filtering a lot of respiratory droplets. So in addition to just bringing in that fresh air, there are a number of systems that can be installed to clean the air as it circulates through your home, being heated or cooled as well. So there's a few ways to approach this, and we can address all of those along with addressing any of the sources of environmental contamination in the home to begin with, like sealing moisture into the soil, by encapsulating crawl spaces, keeping air from leaking in through dusty attics and basements, and a number of other sources. So we're coming at this not just from the mechanical side, but really from 3 or 4 or 5 different angles all at once to give you a really holistic approach to make the whole home healthier.
Thanks, John. I didn't even recognize you there. I was just going to say that Hal has been talking about a lot of demand for better than HEPA filters put in. That's just, I've never heard so many people interested in ventilation in my life until the past few months. And I'm just sitting here thinking, what would it be like to have a house that was so well insulated you needed to figure out where to ventilate it from? I don't think that's ever going to happen to me until I move.
Sure it could.
So interestingly, I actually do have an ERV in my house.
Experts over.
We're going to say,
Lindsay, experts to your house.
Yeah, no, they've said it's not going to happen. Lindsay, go ahead.
I was going to say, so actually I do live in a house that's well insulated enough that we needed to install a ERV and a recovery ventilator. And, you know, this is a house that we completely gutted. So all of our walls are really well insulated. So is the attic. And I will just second, you know, Dick was talking about how quiet it is when you actually insulate the walls. We live on a really busy street in Syracuse, and I can barely hear the cars going by right now. And that's mostly because we don't have trim around my windows yet. Renovations, keep going. But it's also, throughout the summer, I stayed really cool. Even when it was super hot. We don't even have air conditioning in this house. There's a couple of days where we turned on the fans, but the insulation kept us cool in the summer and it keeps us warm in the winter. So there's a lot you can do just by improving the envelope of your house.
That's great. Thank you for that testimonial, Lindsay. I'm extremely jealous. So, are there other questions that folks might have? We have a lot of expertise here. You know, one of my questions is always, if you can't do everything, what should you do first? I think that was covered by Dick, but we might want to reiterate that. You know, not everybody can get everything done at once. So if you wanted to just know where to start, obviously you would enroll with HeatSmart and get a home assessment, but where would be the first thing to focus on?
I would suggest that most people start by insulating the home, only because if you start with your heating system and then you insulate your home or make it more airtight, you often can end up with a system that's bigger than your home needs. And that can actually cause complications and inefficiency in and of itself. So it's almost always better to start by treating the building, getting the building as healthy and tight as possible, and then look at swapping out your heating systems. And not only do you avoid complications with the heating systems, but maybe by tightening up your home, you don't need as much heat and you can spend less money on that heating system when you do go to do it. So it's also a more cost-effective way of doing it. So I always suggest start with an energy audit and really look at making sure the building is nice, tight, and healthy before you swap out that heating system.
Elizabeth, it looks like you had something to add.
I agree with everything Doug just said. I just wanted to throw in that because it's just the right thing to do, NYSERDA also won't give out all that great money that Lisa talked about unless you tighten your house first. So it's a good thing. They shouldn't. That should definitely be the approach first, is to reduce. And so I just wanted to make that point, that that's requirement of the program.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess the question is, if you can't insulate your whole house all at once, where should you start?
So this is Hal. I'll jump in on that if I could.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Hal Smith with Halco. So, you know, when we look at it, obviously, as both John and Elizabeth have said, insulation and air sealing is the place to start. But to further break that down, you know, if I'm going to just insulate and air seal, where do I start? Well, air sealing is, you know, the most effective thing that you could do. If you only air sealed, you're going to make a big difference. But then we prioritize the house by what we call the ABCs of insulation and air sealing. A stands for the attic, which is the highest priority. B stands for the basement or the bottom if you have a crawl space. That's the second priority. And C stands for the conditioned space in between. And we very much use that when we approach the house. You know, again, we air seal first, and then we would insulate the attic. We would insulate the basement or the crawl space secondly, and then thirdly, the conditioned space in between. And we use that to prioritize how we would approach the measures.
That's great, thanks. Johannes has a question about the Comfort Home program. Somebody want to dig into that a little bit? And we do have a fact sheet about Comfort Home on our website.
It is still out there. It's being less utilized, obviously, since they bumped up the AHP levels, but it is still out there. And this pertains to folks that are above the income threshold cutoff. So that's what that program was designed for. But yes, it is still available.
Thanks.
You want to give some details about Comfort Home?
It's a pilot program right now that NYSERDA is putting together as like I said, a means to further incentivize folks that aren't eligible for the LMI grants. And it really is geared towards getting your house ready for heat pumps. So they have a couple of different tiers of grant available, and it's really depending on what measures you're putting in the house. So for example, if you insulate the attic and basement, they will give you X amount of dollars. If you know, it's like $1,500. If you insulate, you know, the attic and the basement and the walls, you get like another $1,000. If you throw in, you know, high efficient windows, you get another $1,000. And then there's another, an additional rebate grant available if you're also doing heat pumps in addition to that. So it really is tiered based on what the house needs. It's not a flat rate thing. It can be a little cumbersome, and there's, you know, navigating exactly what their intent of the program can be a little bit crazy making, but we've used it. We've done a couple of projects through the program, and it was launched before all this stuff happened. So I don't think it's getting the attention, mainly because of the LMI monies went up, but it is out there, and we are still doing it.
That's great.
I can say as a pilot program, we have meetings coming up very soon with NYSERDA to get feedback and to improve the program, and we feel strongly that they will continue to improve it and a little less cumbersome that Matt. So I think going forward, it's going to be a very good program. The one thing that is different that Matt pointed out is it includes windows. It's the only program through NYSERDA that includes windows. Is program, so that makes it very much different.
But and to echo what Hal was saying as far as prioritizing and such, that program also prioritizes the attic, the basement. You know, those things have to be done first before you can go to the next tier. So if you just want windows, if your attic and basement aren't adequate, it's not going to happen. So which is good. That's one good thing they did about it, is they're focusing in the right areas.
Thanks so much. That's very helpful. Well, it is 7:52. I wanted to thank everybody. You don't have to leave. You can stay and ask more questions, but we did want to start and end on time. Please look for our other upcoming webinars. One thing that you can do to help spread the word is to, if you use Facebook, to follow HeatSmart Tompkins and follow HeatSmart CNY, share the webinars with your friends and on your home pages. Really help get the word out. It's hard to get the word out about some of these special assistance programs that are short term, only until the end of the year. There's not a lot of materials available to talk about them. And there's a lot of folks that could get this money that don't think of themselves as low income. You know, 2 teachers with 3 kids probably are going to qualify for, you know, thousands of dollars worth of work on their house, and they probably are too busy to know about it. So if you have friends that that have a house that could benefit from this, and if the house has already had the insulation air sealing work, some of these money can go towards a new heating system and a heat pump system, especially for folks who are on propane. So so, you know, help us spread the word about our webinars, our website, and all this information, because we can't really do it without you. The community support is what grows these programs, and that's what makes them effective, is the word of mouth. You know, we can take out radio ads and newspaper ads and TV ads and Facebook, but unless there's word of mouth where people saying, hey, you should talk to Lindsay at the HeatSmart program. She can help set you up with a good contractor and find out about all the incentives. And that's really how these programs can be the most successful. So thanks for being here. Thanks for your questions and your expertise and your support. Please look for our home tours and our other webinars, and stay safe out there. Have a great evening, everybody.